populist people's movements in Germany and France have won sweeping amounts of seats in the parliament, and it is causing the oligarchs and the establishment media to lose their minds. The government is trying to pass laws against other parties even running. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. I'm your host. A couple of major things happened in Europe yesterday that are both attacking the democracy of the world, attacking freedom of the world, and of course attacking their free speech. They don't want you to understand that the people have changed their position. They have changed their ideas. And of course, as ever, those that are at the top are slow to move in the right direction or are scared to death to do the right thing because now they're all in bed with one another and they're just waiting for somebody to blink and to go first. They can draw a lot of inspiration, a lot of strength from Donald Trump's moves, but the rest of the governments in the world are holding on for dear life because even though they are a minority, people have made the mistake of giving them authority. And with that authority, they now want to destroy the system in which they gained that authority. That's one thing that I have always said. People on the left side of the spectrum do not respect the system. They come into the system and they try to exploit the system and they try to say to you, well, I am allowed to use your system, so I will. And then when people say, okay, we'll give you a try, a fair shake, then they want to exploit their system and they want to ignore that system to make you do whatever it is they want to do, like every dictator and tyrant since the beginning of time. Now, I'll get into a couple of stories that are sort of going all over the internet. And I know we probably should be talking about Mark Carney's absurdity for relying on needing the validation of the King of England, but I'll get to that in a different video. I want to talk about free speech and I want to talk about freedom and how the people that are now in authority have essentially become the people that they claimed they were fighting against. You can't even make it up. Like, you know what I mean? Like the idea that you would write that you would read about that in a story or watch it on in a television show or something, you'd be like, yeah, right, that had never happened. And here it is happening. The people that have told you they're trying to be going a new direction are exactly the people that they said they were trying to dethrone. They won't give up authority. They're trying to pass rules against anybody that doesn't agree with them. They want to spy on you. They want to limit your speech. They want to limit your opinions. And all of this is on its way. Mark Carney is one of these people. And the Liberal Party, liberal in name only, is also one of these people, one of these groups. They feel it's fine to call Pierre Poilievre names. But if anybody on Pierre Poilievre's side calls them a name or says anything in response to that or criticizes them in the smallest way, well, they want to turn on Bill C-63, C-11, C-18 to terrorize, crush, and destroy anybody that might have a different opinion of theirs. And we can see evidence of this happening now in two parts of Europe and how the ideology is the same. So the geography means nothing. In Germany the other day, the ruling coalition had their security arm label the most popular party in Germany, called the AfD, a right-wing group. Because they have labeled them right-wing, they now feel they have the right to spy on them. They have the right to monitor and watch them. Let me just start at the beginning and say right out of the gate that there is nothing more ridiculous than a government saying that we want to give people freedom that is turning around spying on their competitors. This is no different than what they were doing with the FBI against Donald Trump and which is why so many people at the top of the FBI had to go, because they have been driven not by an ideology of fairness to their brother, to their sister, to their countrymen. They've been driven by this ideology that they're better than you, that what they feel, how they look at the world is superior to yours. And you're just not smart enough to know better. So we're just going to pass a bunch of laws that limit your opinion because we don't agree with it, which is amazing because when there was a time when they didn't agree with people's lifestyles, they demanded that the system not surveil them. They demanded that the system allow them the right to speak. Now that they find that the shoe is on the other foot, they are trying to convince you that they are justified in turning into the people that they basically ran against. Now they want to turn Germany into a police state, which is exactly what it was in the 1930s. And they want to try and tell you that they're doing it for an ideological slant that most of the country doesn't agree with. And the only reason that they're getting away with it is because they happen to have a coalition that gives them a few more seats. It's absurd. Now I can show you here there's a graph, right? And you can see the AFD is the most popular party. And everybody will out there go, no, that's just not true. But it is actually the most popular party because the rest of the parties are all coalitions of parties. They had to merge. They had to get together. They had to become one party in an effort to stop the popularity of the leader of the AFD or the party in itself, just like they had to do against Pierre Poilievre. Of course, you don't hear anybody in the center or on the right complaining about that because we recognize that you can get together under it and all you want to. But to try and tear it down, that's a line too far. You have to play by the rules that are laid out. And if you don't want to play by the rules, then don't expect us to play by the rules. And therein lies the rub. That is where it becomes a problem. You see? An initiated of not following the very rules that you were utilizing to become in power. Now you want to make it so that not everybody is allowed to play by those rules. Now you want to use taxpayers' dollars to spy on your opponents. Oh yeah, no, that sounds exactly like democracy. I use that example because J.D. Vance made the comment that the AFD is the most popular party in Germany and by far the most representative of Eastern Germany. Now the bureaucrats want to destroy it. The West tore down the Berlin Wall. I suggest any of you that are too young to remember what that is to Google it. It's quite a significant cultural thing that it impacts your life every day. And it has been rebuilt, not by the Soviets or the Russians, but by the German establishment. Now, don't forget, Soviet is a political term. However, it hasn't stopped there. Secretary Marco Rubio says Germany just gave its spy agency new power to surveil the opposition. That's not democracy. It's tyranny in disguise. And it absolutely is tyranny. There's no denying that. There is no denying that. What is truly extremist is not the popular AFD, which took second in the recent elections, but rather the establishment's deadly open border immigration policies and the AFD opposes. Germany should reverse its course. And of course, that's one of the largest problems that people don't want to understand. We don't agree with your policy, whatever it happens to be. In this one, they're saying that it's an open border. And we know in Canada, we've already had many, many problems with immigration. What I can't understand is why, instead of, like when it comes to immigration, what I can't understand is why we wouldn't export these ideologies instead of importing the people. Because what's happening in Germany is and I mean, I'm trying to be delicate here, but it boils down to the statistics for people who are committing crimes are not reflective of a positive immigration system. Like it's not working out the way that everybody indicates that it would, and it's costing them millions in tax dollars as they pay for the hotels, just like you see them doing in Canada, just like you see them doing everywhere. France, Germany, Britain, Sweden, where it has just become a complete disaster. But they don't want you to say that, right? They don't want to hear it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to respect your desire to discuss it. They just want you to do as you're told because they're not into the democracy like they claim to be. They're only into the suppression of anybody who doesn't agree with them. They are quite literally the epitome of dictator tyrant. If you don't agree with the way that they do it, it's time it's not that they'll say, okay, let me meet you halfway. Let's be reasonable. Let's work this out. No. It's you do it or else. And they're not happy with that in Germany, as you can tell by the fact that the only non-coalition party in the group is the one that has second most votes. But if you were to not allow coalitions, they would be out front by far, by many percentages. And of course, that's going to only increase as the tyrant tightens the girdle to try and make it so that but the more that you tighten the girdle, the more people will go that way. Just like you see in Canada, how you can say, well, the Liberals and the NDP coalition, they won all those seats. And you can ignore the fact that the Conservative Party gained, 24 seats? I mean, it's there. It's just right there. You can look at it in your only everyday life because it always works out this way. You can read a book on this, and we could have avoided it if people would have just put the brakes on the people who don't want to respect the system. I'll go with one more here before I bring it home. Weisgard 24, Germany's foreign ministry answer Rubio about the potential ban of the AFD party. And I've read that post to you already, but this was a response to it. This has come from the German Foreign Office. Imagine that now. This is like the office of the ambassador and all of the rest of that. This is democracy. The decision is the result of a thorough and independent investigation to protect our Constitution and the rule of law. It is independent courts that will have the final say. We must learned from our history that right-wing extremism needs to be stopped, which is, of course, exactly what they would have said in 2005 when they said it must be stopped, when they say that the extremism of the left must be stopped. Now, here's the part that's going to make everybody upset. It was never a right-wing ideology. It all started with Marxism. Marx was a German or an Austrian, somewhere in there anyway. Now, I asked Google AI just to provide for me the name of the party, the official name, and how it translated into Germany, because it's the NIZI was actually a derivative. It was a slang term. It was technically called the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Socialist Workers' Party. Where have I heard that before? I'm sure it'll come to me where I've heard the term Socialist Worker Party, and how everybody who keeps running around saying that it's all about the people and the workers is somehow left-leaning. Do you want me to believe that that's changed in the last almost 100 years? Or do you want me to believe that you have been fed a line that is simply not the truth? And therefore, what's really going to hurt you, what's really going to bring it home, which is really going to hit you in the breadbasket, as the expression used to go, that means that the individuals that took down the guy in Italy and took down the guy in Germany, they were all from the right side of the aisle. It was the right-wing people that brought back the freedom and the stability, that defended honor and democracy and removed the tyranny of these left-wing politicians, these socialist worker parties. Because there was three main ones, they all stem from the same ideology. Now, I know that's got a sting, but don't blame yourself. You've been misled. You've been led astray, and that's how mass media works, right? That's what they do. They try to repeat themselves over and over again and try to convince you that this must have been the situation. They need to erase history first. And it's not a secret. All the intellectuals of the world know this. They know that it wasn't a right-wing ideology. But at 100%, absolutely, there's no denying it. There's none. It was the right wing that took them down. It was the right wing that removed them. It was the right wing that put the threat to rest. People are running around trying to convince themselves that they are somehow, by being exactly the same way, are somehow being different. The fact that you don't want to hear a different opinion is what matters. It's not what color your hair is, or what uniform you wear, or what music you listen to, or what's pierced on your face. That means nothing. That's just a costume. That's just a decoration. The fact that you won't allow people to say something that you don't agree with, the fact that you don't allow anybody to have an opinion that is differing from your own, that's what you need to look at, because that's exactly what you're talking about. They are a populist party and they gain popularity with every growing moment, but they only gain that because the policies of the individuals that are in charge are making the people so unhappy. And of course, the people that are in charge see that. And they're like, wait a minute, if I make them unhappy, but I can't change what I'm doing because it's given me everything that I have. So I must just crank up the rules and make it worse on them. And by doing so, of course, they send another 20% of the population their way. You watch, it's going to happen in Canada right now. Mark Carney he needs to try to find somebody to blame, right? So right now in Germany, they're trying to blame the AFD. And in Britain, they're trying to blame the Reform Party. So now if we move over to Britain, we can read this article I picked up from the BBC. Talks about how Reform UK has won a lot of support, won a lot of seats, because it turns out that in Britain they were having all of their local elections at the same time, as well as one by-election for a parliamentary seat, which the Reform person won by like a slim margin, but they won it nonetheless. However, on the ground, like on the lower levels of the government, they completely trounced all of their competition. Again, because the people that they were running up against were not listening to the people on the ground. The only one party that was listening to the people got the support. That's how it works. It's not about an ideology. Unless that ideology is people aren't listening to me, then it's got nothing to do with anything else. I get that a lot of people vote along political lines on the left side of the aisle, but not on the right. On the right side of the aisle, they vote along the lines of a certain lifestyle. And that lifestyle centers around community, which is to say, I want a community with good, that can afford to support themselves. I want a community that's safe. And I want a community that agrees with me. And there's nothing wrong with that. Reform UK makes big gains in English local elections. Nigel Farage's Reform UK made big gains in English local elections, cementing it as the prime challenger to Britain's traditional main parties. You see, that's what happened, right? You go after the establishment, and then you become the establishment, and then the people say, we don't like the establishment. And now you're trying to turn it into something other than just the fact that your ideology is not the one that people like. And it's funny how with your ideology, you said, oh, no, tradition must be torn down. And then as soon as people say, we don't agree with the way that you're doing things, you come back with, no, tradition must be respected. Reform UK, it won 677 of around 1,600 seats contested on Thursday across a clutch of mainly Tory-held council last contested in 2021. Reform seized control of 8 authorities from the Conservatives, including former strongholds Kent and Staffordshire. The party also won control of Doncaster, the only council Labour was defending, and Durham, where Labour was previously the largest party. Reform also displaced Labour in Runcorn and Helmsby, where it won a tightly fought Westminster by-election to make Sarah Poshin its 5th MP. As well as winning control of its first ever councils, Reform has also won its first mayoral contest in the newly created combined authority of Great Lincolnshire and Hull and East Yorkshire. A jubilant Farage said the results meant Reform had overtaken the Tories as the main opposition party to Sir Keir Starmer's Labour government. The elections in 23 councils across mainly rural and suburban areas of England marked the first major electoral test since the Labour's landslide general victory last year. The Tories, who were defending the most seats, had been braced for big losses since the councils up for re-election were last contested in 2021 when the party was riding high under Boris Johnson. Of course, Britain's big concern is that immigration is out of control, crime is out of control, and that they are censoring anybody saying anything about it on the internet. So they're talking, the regular people from having gossip are talking about the situation in their community, while the government gets rich off bringing people from other countries into the country illegally and giving them things that they are not giving the local population, giving them free housing and a lot of money every month, much like you see in Canada, much like you see in Sweden, much like you see in Germany, much like you see in France, much like you see in so many countries. And it bothers people. Now, I get that these countries have a much grander history and they have their own culture that they're trying to talk about. What I want you to see is how the corporations are turning against the will of the people. When you're talking about a sweeping change throughout the country, right? I don't know what color reform is, but it was certainly a reform wave. They took a mayor, they took over councils, they took a 5th seat in the House of Commons. And they did so based on the idea that they are going to look after the will of the people. It doesn't matter what that will is. That's the thing that you need to that you misunderstand when you sit on the left. You're not there to tell people what they want to think. You're not there to tell people what they believe. You are not put there for that purpose. And you are put there, right? They gave you their vote to speak for them. And when you ran around making all kinds of promises, you should have been keeping track on what you were actually saying, because what they really mean is, I need you to give me a decent standard of living. Of course, you have taken that standard of living away from people. And rather than admit it, or rather than get out of the way, rather than tell yourself that you screwed it up and that you need to be replaced or that you need to change your whole way of thinking, you told yourself that it was all about tighten the censorship laws and you needed to create an enemy, Donald Trump. But now that enemy, Donald Trump in Canada, would come back to Canada, that enemy is gone. And in Britain, the enemy was the Reform Party. But now the Reform Party is no longer that enemy, because it turns out that they actually were talking about what the people now agree with them. It turns out now that the people understand what they were talking about. And like I've told many of you from the very beginning, the local politics is what matters. It's that changes your community. The guy in Ottawa, yeah, he can make some big changes. But the mayor, the city council, these are the people that control all of the issues, many of the issues that we're talking about. Oh, no, you'll say it's the provincial. No, it's not, though. It's the municipal. And that's what you saw there, that the reform has taken control of many of the municipal seats in the country. And by the time the next election rolls around, it will probably be much worse. It'll be much grander. Just like you will see the next time there's an election in Canada, which most experts agree probably be a year, 18 months. You can tell already how desperate Mark Carney has become. Does that mean that he's going to have to go as extreme as, say, they are in Germany and start spying on the Conservatives? I don't really know. Anyway, so now we can see we have Brazil, we have France, we have Romania, we have Germany, we have England, we have the United States, and to some degree we have Canada, though I can understand that it's going to take one more pass to get there. And that is what I want all of you to see. You are the people, and the people bring the change. And the government doesn't tell you how to make your life. The government is trying to tell you what they want their friends to be believing. Centralized governments always try to exert control, just like they did in the 20s of Italy, the 30s of Germany, the 50s, 60s, 70s of the USSR, just like they're doing currently in many countries of Asia. The central government doesn't have a clue what to do correctly. They can only tell you what they don't want you to do. Now, if you think that that's the kind of government that you want, then I guess you're doing just fine under the Liberal government. Liberal in name only. But if you care about your community, if safety and all of the things that you see, the issues that are being talked about in other parts of the world are something that matters to you, then you have to stand together. You have to learn to be vocal, and you have to make sure that your politician doesn't dare take that right away from you. You have to ensure that none of your politicians tell you that it's okay for them to censor you because it might hurt their feelings. Their feelings are exactly the reason that we must have free speech. Their feelings are exactly the reason that free speech is important. Because as I've told you once, I'll tell you again, and I will continue to say it, freedom of speech is not about the right to say whatever you want and act like a fool and curse and swear and do all kinds of things like you were 11 years old. Freedom of speech is the right to speak truth to power. And if that truth is that you don't agree with the way that they're handling anything, then that's the truth you get to say. And if they cannot handle that, if they feel that the only way that they can stop you is by censoring you, then the problem is on them. And it's up to you to recognize that they are stripping away from you a right that will never stop. It will get to the point where you will be afraid to open your mouth for fear of who's around you. Without freedom of speech, there is no such thing as freedom. All right, I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.